Hello and welcome to Super OK, where we try to do a decent enough job to entertain people with our opinions on video games. As always, my name is Dale. I don't know why I said James. Video games. Stupid.
James?
Yeah, I don't know, man. Anyway, as always, my name's Dale, and I'm joined here by, well, you already heard Mel. Mel, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, James. How are you?
Great. No, man, it's like, like we got Michael Transaction and then our best friend, Video James. So dumb. So absolutely dumb. And then we are also joined here by someone who is near and dear to my heart, and that is Kevin, a.k.a. Kevin Tense, a.k.a. My brother. Welcome.
Hello. Thanks for having me. And it's probably good that you don't have anyone that's part of the podcast named James or Michael, just so it doesn't cause a bunch of confusion.
That's true. That's very true.
Yeah. Imagine.
Heard
you're talking about me again.
Yeah.
All right. So this is the second time that we've had you on the podcast. And correct me if I'm wrong, but last time we had you on because you were an expert in the field of Pokemans. Is that correct?
I think that's correct. I think I was brought on specifically to correct any mistakes that were made in discussing Pokemon.
Yes. And this time we brought you on in a similar capacity because we're going to be talking about all sorts of law stuff, and you're a law guy, right?
Yes, I am a classically trained law talking guy. Important disclaimer here, I am not a copyright law talking guy, but I did take a copyright class in law school. And so everything that I say here is not legal advice. Do not take legal advice from a video game podcast.
Yeah, good call. Good call. And you're licensed to practice law in how many states?
Exactly one.
Perfect. That's the number of states I'm not allowed to go into. Guess which one? You got it wrong. All right. So this is a video game podcast, but every week we like to start off with a highlight of the week where it's a thing that made our week a little bit better, a little bit brighter, a little bit nicer to live in. And we always like to let our guests go first. So this time, Kevin, if you wouldn't mind, please hit us with your highlight of the week.
My highlight of the week is a little anomalous, but it is the Detroit Lions. And we are recording this after the NFC Championship game where they absolutely threw against the San Francisco 49ers in Santa Clara. But I was so excited just to be able to watch the Lions, my favorite team, play football live and in the end of January, which is something that I've never been able to do while my brain has been able to form memories.
Fair enough.
I mean, I was alive the last time that they appeared in the NFC Championship game, but I don't remember it. Don't hold me to that.
When was that? We're talking about like 30 years ago, right?
Yeah, it was like early 90s. I think it was January of 92, maybe.
Okay. Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, I know everybody I know who's a sports fan was stoked. I watched the whole game. I think it's the first time I've watched an entire football game as a grown adult, where I had a choice in the matter, as opposed to it just being like a thing that was on and in the room. It was a really interesting game to watch. And most importantly, it didn't look like the Lions didn't belong there. It looked like they should be there. They put up a hell of a fight. And aside from some weird, dropped balls and that sort of thing, it could have went either way.
Yeah, the third quarter was a bit of a farce, but the rest of it, they actually looked like they belonged there.
Yeah. The third quarter was pretty bad.
How do you get a ball chucked to your face, bounce off, and have the team catch the ball? That was still wild to me.
It was really bad. I don't remember who that was, but God, that's going to be a bad highlight for whoever that dude is forever.
Yeah, I remember who it was. I'm not going to name him.
That's very nice of you.
Very kind. Oh, man, that's funny. That is funny. All right, I will go next with my highlight of the week. My highlight of the week is the fact that during the pagoda, the panini, one of my nieces, I got a weird family, so I've got a niece who's like 10 years younger than me, not even 10 years younger than me. She had a baby, and then she had another baby, all during the pandemic. And so I ain't met them babies yet. And they just now, this past weekend, drove down the 3 hours to come to her 4-year-old daughter's cheerleading competition in Novi, which is like, half an hour from me. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to come see my niece do cheerleading. And here's the thing. If you have the opportunity to go and watch some like tiny children do cheerleading, it's adorable.
Is it?
It's basically just like tiny kids being put on other tiny kids by slightly less tiny kids. like it's like a 2-person tall human pyramid, like that sort of thing, The coach is on stage with them, like showing them the arm movements that they need to do in that moment. Like it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous and very, very cute. That said, if you have a small child and they are interested in getting into competitive cheerleading, do not let them. It's the most expensive thing on the planet. It was so wild and so costly. Like, it was insane. So go and watch it if you have like a family member who's doing it, but do not let your own children do it.
God,
I don't know if you knew this, but I used to like coach tumbling for cheerleaders when they were older than the very tiny, essentially like holiday pageant level.
Okay.
Really?
And
wow.
And it was so expensive for those kids. Like I learned what some of those parents were paying for them to be in the cheer programs. And I was just like, oh God. Oh no. Also, I'm not seeing any of that money. So, oh God. So
that's wild. Yeah. It's just insane how expensive some of this stuff is. And it was also like the anti-capitalist in me was infuriated because it was like they got all of the girls up there for a dance party and they were like throwing out like Live Strong bracelets, but it had the cheer branding on it and that sort of shit. And then before they would do the awards, they would show off all of the different merch that you could buy. And then if you won, you could buy different, better merch that was more expensive to show that you were the state champion.
So you were competing to spend more money.
Exactly. And then they got all of these little 4 and 5-year-old girls to like scream out, I need it. So it was just like, that part sucked. But seeing the kids, how adorable they were, getting a chance to like get to know my great niece and great nephew, absolutely awesome. We like went and played hide and seek in the hotel room and they were very bad at it and it was very cute. Like they beat the crap out of me. It was adorable. I got videos. It was great. So that is definitely my highlight of the week. What about you, Mel? Did you have anything happen this week?
I did. Last week was my birthday week. So I got to celebrate my birthday not once, not twice, but like 3 times.
Happy birthday,
with like
happy
3
birthday,
different
happy
people.
birthday.
Thank you. So I got to, my first birthday was like me spending it with my friends. The second birthday was just like me and my husband, which was really nice because we ended up getting sushi. And like my husband doesn't really like sushi, but I love sushi. So he's like, because it's your birthday, we're going to go. And he's like, where do you want to go? And I was like, I want to go to Noble Fish. So we ended up going to Noble Fish. And I haven't been since they've bought out Flipside, which was like the record store next to Noble Fish.
Man, I didn't know Flipside closed. This is a shitty way to find out.
I don't think that they've closed. I think they've moved. I just don't remember where they moved to. But they no longer have that location. So that area is now like all of like the Noble Fish like sitting dining area. So that was kind of a surprise to me. But the food was still really good. And I was just really excited to be there. I love sushi.
Yeah, because Noble Fish used to just do like takeout, right? And then
they had a small little dining area in the back where it was like the just like the sushi bar, and there was maybe like 2 or 3 tables back there. But now they have like this bigger sushi bar where you could do like the takeout, but you could also like dine in and order like from their I don't know, their ordering station and then just go sit down at one of their big tables and have some food there.
Nice.
So it was really great. I enjoyed it. And the sushi was like very reasonably priced. So it wasn't like going out and like spending $100 on yourself. It was like spending less than $100 for 2 people.
That's pretty good. What's your go-to sushi roll?
I am such a like sushi purist. Like I would rather just get like a traditional like salmon roll or like salmon and onion. But I got to have like this fatty tuna and onion roll at Noble Fish, and that was like so good.
That's awesome. That's awesome. There's a place near us that has something called the Crazy Boy roll.
Ooh.
And it's a tempura asparagus. I couldn't think of the vegetable. Sorry. Tempura asparagus in with crab, and it's really, really good.
Well, that sounds lovely. And so it's like is it deep fried roll or is it just like the asparagus is in tempura?
The whole roll is deep fried.
That sounds so good.
It is.
Now, is it actual crab or is it like the imitation, like the crab with a K?
Real crab, baby. Snip, snip.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. It's great.
I need to go there. Where is this? What is it called?
I don't remember. I will put it in the food channel in the Discord after this.
Yes, please.
To let people know where it is. Because it's this place in Mount Clemens, and it's pretty damn good. I really enjoy it.
I'm in. I want to try it.
Nice. So, of your 3 birthday celebrations, which one was your favorite?
Probably the sushi one for sure. But the one that I just had with my parents was pretty good as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did you guys do for that?
Oh, we went to go have Korean barbecue.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah, it was so lovely. Nice.
What a great move to just parlay your birthday into 3 excellent meals.
Yes.
Oh man, that's awesome. So I have learned better in all of my years than to ever ask the age of someone. But it was your birthday. Do you now feel old? Do you feel older?
I definitely do feel older.
Yeah.
Not like super old, but I do feel older.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, speaking of super old, there's a super old T.S. Eliot quote that says, "Immature poets imitate, mature poets steal. Bad poets deface what they take, and good poets make it into something better, or at least something different." That quote has been bastardized and shortened and absolutely perverted into a far more common quote that you might have heard that is attributed to 6 or 7 different people that says, "Good artists copy and great artists steal." And the irony of the original quote being changed into that second one is not lost on any of us here on the podcast, I can assure you. That said, we believe that video games are art. And so it makes sense that sometimes developers might borrow some ideas from other games or steal some mechanics or sometimes maybe steal the whole everything about it or not. And who's to say, right? After all, art is iterative, but where it gets fuzzy is when you get the law involved. Since copywriting, trademarking, and intellectual property or IP laws are all designed to protect an original artist from having their work stolen or copied, they apply to video games as well. But where's the line and what is protected? Now, we here are not the courts, and as Kevin said in the intro, do not take any legal advice from us. If you are a video game developer, do not hold this as law. But we do have some precedents that we can go from here. Unsurprisingly, Nintendo was involved in one of the first lawsuits around this when Atari reverse engineered the Nintendo Entertainment System to try and put their own games on it. Turns out that Atari lost because they had illegally gotten some of that code actually from the Copyright Office of all places, which is pretty wild. Since then, there's been tons of different lawsuits, cease and desist orders, numerous projects that have been stopped by these laws, and a few that people think should have, but maybe haven't yet. And so we're going to dig into that. And the main reason that we are talking about all of this is because a game that just released called Palworld, which many are claiming is just a ripoff of Pokemon. So for context, have you played Palworld? And if so, what things, if any, do you think that they took from Pokemon?
I'll go first. So I
Okay.
have played like 30 hours or some amount of Pal World already. So I could speak pretty well on behalf of that game. And I will say that there are some similarities between Pal World and Pokemon, especially when it comes to like the monsters and the artwork of the monsters, and then capturing those monsters into Pal Balls. Obviously, like it's very much similar as Pokemon. Can you go and fight gyms with your pals? It's not quite like that. There are bosses that you can fight against, but it's not like you're earning badges to defeat the Elite Four. Let's be real. But I will say that there are like some really interesting like core culture within Pal World that kind of aligns with like the Pokemon world. Like eating pals and eating Pokemon, like it's kind of the same, but also kind of different in a way where like you can eat them if you want to. You can cook them like you could cook a magic carp or like Poketails, and you can eat them and get, you know, health from it. So yeah, there's like some similarities, but I think that they're very very different games.
Yeah, and so what I've played, I think 14 hours of Power World, and I looked at this question more kind of like from a legal analysis, and I think what they took from Pokemon, probably nothing, is where I started at. And then I was thinking, well, you know, you've got elemental types on the pals that you can collect, and that affects the pal on pal violence. So like some pals are going to be stronger against other pals based on their elemental aspects. And then I was also thinking about the artistic design. But if you ask any Gen 1er from a Pokemon standpoint, they're going to say that there's a huge difference in artistic design between the various Pokemon generations, particularly a rift between like Gens 1 and 2 and all of the rest. And then in thinking about it a little bit further, I was thinking like the creature in ball mechanic was absolutely taken from Pokemon, because I remember playing a just awful creature collector mobile game where you had a gun that shot discs and you had to shoot the different pets with discs to try to capture them. So while I don't necessarily think that throwing a ball at a creature to capture it is like something that would be copyright protected, I do think that it was pretty clearly pulled from Pokemon.
That's fair. That's fair. You used a term there that I'm unfamiliar with. What is a Gen 1er?
Oh, Gen 1ers are the like diehard OG fans of Pokemon that are like every generation after 1. And some people are even willing to extend that to Gen 2. Everything after that was awful. And I think, based on my understanding, part of that originates from the Gen 1 Pokemon stylings having more sharp eyes, kind of like meaner look to them than what you got with every generation after that, where they start looking more kind of chibi inspired.
Yeah,
that's fair.
They're definitely more like cute and kawaii looking Pokemon than like Gen 1 and Gen 2.
Right.
That's interesting. When you first said it, I thought maybe you were smelling almonds, because that didn't sound like a word to me. So thank you for explaining it to me. Also, I kind of agree with it. What generation brought the keychain and the ice cream cone?
I don't know, but they were after the generation that brought the sludge and larger sludge, and then the actual just snake spelled backwards. So you don't have a leg there.
I love Snake spelled backwards. He's amazing. What about Cobra spelled backwards? That's what he turns into.
Yes.
Also amazing.
Yeah. So I have played Pal World for about 4 hours, and I am no lawyer, obviously, but I think it is pretty goddamn clear that they have built out a series of pocket monsters that are at a bare minimum inspired by Pokemon. They look real close. Some of them look real close. Like one of them is a sheep that's a ball. That's a Pokemon. There's already a ball sheep Pokemon, right? Like that guy's just there, right? And I'm not saying like, oh, nobody's ever thought of the idea of a floofy sheep before. So like, is it possible that it's parallel thought? Yeah. But is it possible that it's parallel thought in a game that also involves pal spheres? Probably not. Like, like if you already took the one thing, why not just like grab your hand is already in the take a penny jar. Just take a couple extra pennies. It's fine.
Oh my god. I call them pal balls because I literally was thinking of Pokeballs, but they're actually called pal spheres. You were so right.
Yeah,
oh my god.
It's ridiculous, right? And like the fact that they'll fight for you, and the fact that like you brought up the elemental thing, and the fact that some of them have special powers that let you traverse the world in different ways, right? Like there's a bunch of different stuff that has been borrowed or loaned from Pokemon. But the thing is, some of those aren't ideas that were original anyway. There were ideas that Pokemon took from other games, right? Like Pokemon is not the first game where you collect monsters. It was just the most popular of them. So like there's all of that stuff. Also, there's no Pikachu or whatever, but there's like 3 different pals that look like it. And so it's like like they're like, we're gonna find our fucking our mascot. Come hell or high water, we're gonna throw all the spaghetti at the wall, and one of them's gonna make us $1 billion. So I don't know. Do I think that they copied Pokemon? Maybe, but is it like inspired by? Yeah, I think definitely, right? I definitely think that it's inspired by. Now, speaking of Pokemon, the Pokemon Company just released a statement that they were, quote, looking into it. And that's basically what the statement said. It was like a JPEG on a yellow background, and it was like, hey, we're going to look at this game, which is insane. Now, from a law standpoint, Kevin, what could happen here, and what do you think is most likely? And then Mel and I, and you can even throw your hat into this ring. What do you hope happens next?
All right. So in terms of the statement, I think we might all be kind of on the same page, or at least in the same realm. To me, it's a non-statement. Pocket Pair, the developer for Pal World, has been publicly talking about their game for well over a year. I had seen some people report that Pocket Pair had been talking about Pal World since 2021, so for more than 2 years at that point. And Nintendo was able to get a cease and desist out to a developer who made a Pokemon reskin mod for Pal World within 24 hours. So the idea that they haven't investigated Pal World just seems a little not right to me. So I'm not buying it. But if from like a legal perspective, if there was something that they wanted to do here that they thought they could, what they do is they would look to see what protected elements of Pokemon were being used, whether that's by copyright or trademark. I don't think there's going to be any issue with trademark that requires its own separate registration, and usually would apply to specific names. So like Pikachu is trademarked. The word Pokemon is trademarked. There's a number of Pokemon names that are trademarked that Nintendo holds. So I don't think that we'd really be looking at that, because I think we all know that the names of pals and the names of the Pokemon are going to be different. But they also talked about in that statement assets that they had not given permission to use. So I think if there were anything, it might be related to those assets. So what Nintendo would do, or the Pokemon Company would do, is they would identify the assets that they thought were copied, and then sue to enjoin Pocket Pair from using those assets, or stop Pocket Pair from using those assets. And if that injunction is granted by a court, and all of this would happen in Japan. And as little as I know about US copyright law, I know even less about Japanese copyright law. But I know how injunctions work. And if that injunction were granted, Pal World might be removed from the marketplace until it was no longer using those protected assets. Might have to pay Nintendo based on the sales they've already made. And then if it were ever brought back onto the market, would probably have to push an update that removed those assets from any of the existing copies of Pal World that people had. Now, in terms of what I hope happens, I hope that none of that happens as it relates to a lawsuit, because the gamer in me and the diehard Pokemon fan who also can recognize the failures of Pokemon in recent years wants to see the Pokemon Company and Nintendo inspired by the success of Pal World and willing to finally invest more than just the minimum necessary to reach a bottom threshold of what people will accept in Pokemon games. I think that they are probably putting more money right now into developing plushies than games, and that makes me a little sad just as a gamer.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was a lot.
No, it's
No.
fine. You're you're the expert, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what you're here for. So you talked about like protected like stuff in the beginning there. And I'm not a lawyer, obviously. I said protected stuff.
Yeah.
Fuck. Anyway, but I agree wholeheartedly. Like I think if Nintendo were going to do anything, or the Pokemon Company, or whatever you want to, Game Freak, whoever, like they would have done some shit like a year ago when I saw a video of a Meganium. Yeah, of course. That's the one I didn't try. With rocket, with shoulder mounted rocket launchers, right? Like that's when Nintendo would have done something like a year ago when the video first surfaced. Like they clearly looked at it and were like, this is not worth our time to try and pursue. If we try and pursue it, we'll probably lose. If they try and pursue it in a court, they'll probably lose and set a precedent, and that's really dangerous. And so they'd much rather have it be like, we'll come after you if we know that it's bad, which leads me to believe that they really only made this statement to shut up the people who've been like tweeting at them and saying shit like, I can't believe Pokemon let them do this. Have you seen this at Pokemon? Like they're not aware of this game.
Right.
You know? Like it's some dumb shit. So yes, I agree. I think it's probably a non-statement. I think it's just there to appease the people who are like, Pokemon, did you see this? This game has sold 7 million copies and it's been openly in development for several years. Like, yeah, I think that's what it's about. So I don't know.
I would agree. I feel like gamers right now are like more upset that the pals and the Pokemon look the same rather than like the whole like capturing of those monsters.
Right.
Yeah.
Agree or disagree? Okay.
I agree. I also like the idea that there's some like fanboy floating out there who's like, oh man, have I got a scoop for Pokemon? It's a new game that just released that's been in open development for 2 years.
You know who I've got to protect? The company that's made the most profitable franchise of all time. You can look it up, by the way. That's real. Pokemon has made more money than any other franchise, any other intellectual property. It's crazy. And there's somebody on Twitter who's just like white knighting so hard. Like, oh, I'll save you, Pikachu. All right, Mel, what is your opinion on this?
My opinion's pretty much Kevin's opinion. Like, if you were to look at some of those people who are like white knighting for Pokemon, right? Like they get down to like very specifics of like the ratios of the monsters and how similar they are to one another. And like maybe they could possibly make a case for that. But the only thing that they probably could do to like rectify it would be like pull those monsters from the game, right? Give Pokemon Company restitution for utilizing, assets that look very, very similar. They couldn't pull the game itself. There's like no way, because the game is it's a survival game. It's not. It's primarily a survival game with pals.
Yeah,
that's fair. That's a good point. Yeah, we haven't covered right now, or we haven't covered up until now, that the core gameplay loop in Pal World is drastically different than the core gameplay loop in Pokemon. Like drastically different. So
yeah,
that's a really good point, Mel.
Yeah, there's I'll talk about it a little bit later because I've got a case that I wanted to cite, but that's one of the analyses that is discussed in court when you're challenging something on copyright as it relates to gameplay mechanics, is like, what's that core gameplay loop? Sure. Now, I will say that this is closer to like Pokemon Legends Arceus than any other Pokemon game, but it's still even a far cry from that.
Right.
Yeah, that's fair. All right. So Nintendo, famously litigious. They've taken down fan games. They've taken down YouTube videos. They even took a go-kart company in Japan to court over their kart designs, saying that they infringed on their Mario Kart designs, which is absolutely wild. Now, I want us to talk about what we think about this. And then, Kevin, I would love for you to tell us why the law says we're wrong. So, Mel, if you don't mind, share your opinion on this.
I would say that they are totally able to do stuff like this because essentially they're protecting their own IP. And it kind of sucks because, like, you know, as a fan, like, and people who love your IP, they want to be able to be creative with like the art that you already have put out. But at the end of the day, you know, the Pokemon company is a business, so they're going to do whatever they can to protect and make money themselves.
That is fair. That is fair. To quote one of my old managers, there is a logo on the front of the building and it eats money. We are not a nonprofit. So I get that, right? I get a company like needing to protect their IP. I also, as an idiot, kind of think it sucks, right?
Mhm.
Like, in my opinion, copyright, trademark, IP protection, all of that should only apply to projects where the creator is attempting to make money. If you are attempting to profit off of another person's idea, I think in those cases, you should be protected. The original person should be protected.
Really?
But, I'm sorry?
I was going to say really because, like, what about like the reputation of their own IP though?
Well, and that's the thing. Fan projects, passion projects, that sort of thing. I think that they should be exempt. I think that they should have to put some sort of warning on the front of it or whatever to like legally distinguish it from. But like, if you want to make a cool ass Pokemon comic or a cool ass Pokemon like alternate video game thing, and it's better because it uses Pokemon, great, go for it, as long as you're not making money off of it, right? If you start making money off of it, that's where I say the line should be. Obviously, the law does not agree with me, and your point about reputation is probably why the law does not agree with me. But also, like, I think an idea of like a video game, a first person shooter where you're Kirby and you're fucking eating all of the Smash Bros characters like in corridors and then like gaining their powers. That sounds cool as hell to me. Nintendo will never make it. Why can't I? You know, like that sort of thing. So that's my take on it. Kevin, tell me why I'm a dumbass.
Bro, I just want to let you know that I love the idea of a first-person shooter where you are Kirby and instead of shooting things, you just inhale them.
Yeah, first person eater.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sounds-
I'm on board. I'll fund that. Like, go fund me it. Have it taken down in 3 hours by Nintendo, but for those 3 hours, it will be popular.
We'll live like kings.
From a trademark perspective, I know that U.S. law requires holders of trademarks to zealously defend their trademarks, or they risk losing them. Like, that can be brought up as a defense in future trademark infringement cases. I don't know if that applies as well to copyright. But like you said, companies exist for profit, right? And so allowing unauthorized copying without any sort of ramifications puts at least some of that profit at risk. Because even a fan, like a fan-made mod where they say they're only trying to recoup the amount of funds that they put into the project, is still going to lead to money changing hands. And litigation is always a business decision where, you know, companies that are the most litigious, like Nintendo, make the calculation that when they aggressively defend their IP, it's worth whatever that costs in court. But that's also done on a case-by-case basis. So there are some times, perhaps like here, where they say, yeah, maybe we can take that chance, but it might cost more than it's worth. And because copyright is always about navigating nebulous rules, it's an instance where the more companies that bring these cases and resolve them in court, the better it is for the rest of us too, because then we have an idea of where the line is between inspired by and improperly copying. And so everyone after that, like you said about precedent earlier, everyone after that knows the rules. So we know where we can and can't be stepping in terms of copying certain things and not copying others.
Can you help me? Because now I'm thinking about like the inspired by and improperly copying. Where does parody fall into all of this? Because I know that you can do like parodies of certain things and that's totally legal. But like where does that line get drawn?
Oh, that's a really good question. I'm actually super glad you brought that up, because that's a thing that a lot of people don't quite understand well in the realm of like copyright. And so you may have heard the phrase fair use. I think probably everyone's heard that phrase. Fair use is where parody would fall. And super importantly, fair use is a defense against a claim of copyright infringement. So you have to essentially admit, yeah, I copied that, I did it improperly, but I am justified under this other piece of the copyright code. So
that's interesting. So
that's how parody.
So
works.
It's basically like, yeah, I'm guilty, but this other thing says that it's cool. And then if a judge comes out and says like, no, man, that other thing doesn't cover you, you're ultra fucked because you basically said like, yeah, I'm guilty.
Yeah, it's the way that I like to liken it is like a self-defense claim in criminal court, because you have to admit that you did the assaultive crime, whether that's, simple assault or straight up murder. You got to say, yeah, I did it, but I was justified, and the law recognizes this justification. And so you have to you can tell a copyright holder, hey, it's fair use, and then the copyright holder will decide kind of along the same lines of whether it's worth the risk and the costs of court to take that to court and have someone tell you that it's not fair use. But if you're the person infringing, you have to say like, I did an infringement, I did it, I just have a legal reason why I can.
Yeah.
So you're saying that if you if Pal World decided that they were going to be like, I want Pikachu with guns, right? And they could claim that to be essentially parody because it's like, yeah, I'm using your IP, I'm using your art, but like we know that this is not Pokemon. Like this is something beyond that. Claim it as parody, and they might get away with it.
So
parody.
I actually want to butt in here because in the research for this, I did find out that in Japan, there's no such thing as fair use. It just does not exist. Yeah. And so because both of these companies are Japanese companies, there's no chance that they get away with that. If they were both American companies, that's where Kevin can explain. But I'm so proud I knew one thing.
Yeah. And the huge thing there they might not be able to be found liable for infringement of copyright, but something like Pikachu is also a symbol of Nintendo's Pokemon IP, and so it's protected under trademark.
Gotcha.
And I don't know how parody would work for trademark, but I don't think it is as lenient.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
It's such a crazy gray area.
And there's so much there's not so much, but there's at least a considerable amount of opportunity for overlap between trademark and copyright.
Yeah.
Interesting. Speaking of overlap, Pal World isn't the only game to have overlapped a different game. There are a whole bunch of games that have ripped off other games. Sometimes they even did it better. Do you have a copied game or a copy of a game that you particularly enjoy? And if so, tell me about it. I'm going to go first here because I have famously documented my love of the game NBA Hang Time for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, which was just a blatant ripoff of NBA Jam with some light RPG elements thrown in that you could create a player and then improve their stats when you win games. It was as close to NBA Jam as you could possibly get without getting like your ass suit off, I think. Also, my player in that game had an alien head, and that fucking ruled. So that's my game. What about you guys?
I'm going to go with Fortnite over PUBG. And part of that is because PUBG admittedly, totally just said, yeah, we put out a game that's not complete. And then they held tournaments where people were playing an incomplete, buggy mess of a game for money. And I talked to my friend Berserker, shout out Berserker, and because he used to play PUBG a lot. And I was like, how did that work in tournaments? And he's like, oh, if it was a known bug, you just couldn't exploit it. What? What? Just wild. Maybe don't pay out people for contests and instead invest in your game to make it better. Oh, Epic already did that and they made another BR and they called it Fortnite and it's awesome. Oh, okay, I'm just gonna play that one.
Yeah.
That's fair.
God, that's wild.
I totally forgot that PUBG was never a finished game. That's like so wild to me because I knew a whole bunch of like people who were pro like PUBG players, and I didn't realize that like their tournaments were like that.
Yeah, that is just like that. I think that's where my hatred for incomplete games started.
Wow.
I also love the rule of if it's a known bug. So you could just find a bug, sit on it until the tournament, not release it, and exploit it. And it's like, oh, that one wasn't known. Sorry, guys.
I
don't know.
I have seen in like professional like video game settings where like some team will find an exploit that will like increase the speed and then they'll just unleash it like at a tournament, and it was, because there was no rules against it, totally legal.
Oh, that's a
fucking
nightmare.
wild.
Totally legal. Yeah. Crazy.
I also think like, at least for Fortnite, if it's an obvious bug, you can't exploit it like in the moment. Like there was a guy who couldn't be thirsted, and so he was just like down but not out, and the tournament was like, no man, you're gonna get asked to leave now. So
wild. But yeah, I'll go. I'm last. I'll go next. So I'm right now a really big fan of Coral Island, which is pretty much a ripoff of Stardew, which Stardew was a ripoff of the Harvest Moon series. So I clearly have a type of of my favorite games. But yeah, like it's just weird that like for all of these games, like it's so hard to not rip off the last iteration of it.
Yeah. Yeah, especially in like a niche genre like that, where it's like, when does it stop being a ripoff and just start being a new genre?
Right.
Yeah. Mel, quick question for you regarding that. Have you played any of the like what are they, Age of Seasons or something like that games?
Story of Seasons?
Is it Story of Seasons?
Yes. That's also a Harvest Moon game.
It is.
Yeah.
It is actually Harvest Moon because it's made by the same
company.
Same developers.
Yeah.
They just didn't have rights to the name Harvest Moon anymore.
I believe so, and they just called it Story of Seasons.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I was asking.
Like all of the art looks very similar. Like the cows are pretty much identical from one another, and it's just literally the same. I think they have like the same characters, but they're just named differently, and they all do different stuff.
Yeah, that's why I was asking, because those would actually be like the descendants of the Harvest Moon company.
Yeah.
We ripped ourselves off. I threw that shit before I walked in the room. Oh, man. All right. So speaking of games that have ripped themselves off or games that become genres, sometimes the evolution of an idea in video games reaches an industry-wide standard, like the now almost ubiquitous stamina meter that seems to have been popularized by Breath of the Wild, but it's in every fucking game where there's a stamina stat. Do you have a mechanic that you either love or hate that is found in most games now?
I'll go first because I hate it so much. The like mouse cursor menus that console games seem to have. So specifically, I'm thinking of the nightmare that I have navigating menus on my PS5 in Destiny 2, and I've also seen it on Hogwarts Legacy. Any game where you have to use the analog stick to navigate a cursor, but when you move the analog stick, it doesn't just like snap to the next selectable item in the menu. I don't know why it persists. I don't know why it's there, but it seems to be there in a lot of games where you can customize your character in terms of their equipment and things of that nature. And I hate it so much, and I wish it went away.
I agree. Like, why can't they just code it so that it just like snaps to something?
Exactly.
Like, why do you have to like be all over the place? I don't.
The absolute wildest part of that to me, I've never played Hogwarts Legacy, but Destiny was originally a console-only game. It wasn't even a PC game, and so it's not like they did it because it'll be easier when there's a mouse. It's like there was never going to be a mouse,
right?
Yeah, Destiny 2 had a lot of really bad like UI user experience issues with their menus. Like, why do you have to click on the shader and apply the shader to see it on your character. Like, why can't you just click on the shader to see it on your character?
And then why is that shader consumed?
Right? Yeah, why do you have to? It's so stupid. They changed it now, where like it's no longer consumed, but it took freaking years for that to happen. I have a love-hate relationship with like the idea of fog of war and like kind of like map exploration, where like in survival games, like sure, you're exploring and you're learning to like to be a cartographer and like you're figuring out how to make a map. But like in RPGs, like somebody must have already made a map of the town. Like, why can't you just give me that map? Like, why do I have to find the store and instead of like walking into somebody's home? Like, I just like sometimes I just like don't understand why we have a fog of war in some games. Like, it's mind-boggling. And also, why is it that like in some of games where there's like a mini map, you can see all the people around, but like you like how do you know like it like is it part of the lore that like you just can mind read people around you and you know exactly where they're at?
You've got a Call of Duty UAV over you at all times. It pinpoints where people are.
It's crazy. So I have a love-hate relationship with those types of mechanics. Honestly, make up your mind.
That is totally fair. I have a hate relationship with mine, which is where running is a limited resource. Like, I understand. I, as Dale, a human, I can't run forever. I get that. But I also can't leap 3 times my own height or swing a sword and have an energy projection of the blade fly out or spin into a ball or any of those things. Don't limit my ability to run. It's bullshit. I just want to go fast. I don't want my character to have to like lean over and pant or a stamina bar to refill unless I'm playing a flute to like exploit a glitch or like any of that bullshit. Just let my character move quickly. You are artificially inflating the length of your game by forcing me to stop and catch my breath every 40 seconds. That's fucking bullshit.
I was gonna ask how you feel about like a quick jog versus a sprint, but I think I understand based on what you just said and how you definitely reference Breath of the Wild, where there is like a quick jog versus a full out sprint.
Yeah, I just want to be able to go fast. If that would break combat in your game because, oh, now I can run from enemies, fix your combat. Like, don't make me go slow for no good goddamn reason. Oh, I need 8 more seeds so I can run for another 15th of a second. Like, eat my butt. All right. There's some lawyer bullshit about like ideas and the expression thereof. I asked Kevin like, hey, is there anything you want to talk about? And he was like, yeah, this. And then I read it and I blacked out and I woke up and we were recording the episode. So please explain it to us live as though we were babies. And then Mel and I will talk about how much bullshit it is or is not probably is.
Okay, fair. So what I want to talk about specifically as it relates to like Palworld and Pokemon and other video games that will copy off of different sorts of genres that are like groundbreaking. There's a pretty huge legal distinction between an idea and the artistic expression of that idea. And the best thing I can say is like, ask Picasso, Van Gogh, and Dali to paint you a clock. The clock is the idea, but the work that they manufacture at the end is the expression of that idea. And I guarantee you're going to get 3 really, really different looking clocks. So the idea itself can't be protected by copyright, but that expression is. Any discussion about video games regarding like Palworld lately has also included a case called Tetris Holding LLC versus Zio Interactive. And that's a case where Zio admitted it copied as much as it could from Tetris in making a Tetris-like game for mobile, but they said that everything that they copied wasn't protected. And they admitted they were just trying to like make a shit ton of money on mobile. They were just trying to like cash in on all those Tetris players that wanted to play a Tetris game on their phone and didn't want to have just a hulk of a Game Boy in their back pocket. So the the court reasoned there that the idea for a game and or the rules of that game can't be protected. And that would also include anything required to execute those rules or that were inseparable from that idea. And that's the merger doctrine. So as to what an idea was versus what an expression was, like, for instance, Zhayo put forth that a rule of the game required the game board to be higher than it was wide. But they copied the exact game board size from Tetris, which was 20 units high by 10 units wide. And the court was like, even if that's a rule, you could have expressed it in a different manner. You could have had 24 by 12 if it had to be exactly 2 times, but you copied the exact same thing. Some other things that Zhayo had copied that were expressions of that idea were the color of the pieces, the shadow of the pieces that as they would fit with the already accumulated pieces below, the pieces changing to a darker color when they were locked into place, and even the exact shape of the pieces themselves that were used in the game and the manner in which they rotated. So all of those things were considered expressions rather than parts that were inseparable from the rules. And so I think what we'd be looking at as it relates to like Palworld versus Pokemon is the expression is like a sheep, for instance, or a lamb that is round, right? You've got Lamball in Palworld and Wooloo in Pokemon. Wooloo is a quadruped. It's got four legs on the ground, and it's got kind of 2 different ball-like pieces of its body. And then Lamball is literally just like a biped with 2 hoof-looking arms, and it's a perfect ball. So even though they're very close and clearly inspired by one another, they're not the exact same. And the expression of the idea of like round lamb is different.
Dude, I went to a Greek restaurant the other day and got the round lamb. Anyway, so let me make sure that I am understanding what you are trying to convey here. So the idea of a video game having an electric mouse is fine. But if that electric mouse is yellow, okay, maybe now you're in some trouble. Or if it has a jagged tail, then you're more likely to be in trouble. And if it's the secondary color is black and it's bipedal, maybe now you're in more trouble. Like that's kind of what you're trying to say here. Is it's like you can have an electric mouse, but as long as it doesn't look like Pikachu.
Yeah, and that actually brings me to the like one other big thing from this case. This case is only like 12 years old, which, as it pertains to the law, is pretty recent.
That's also crazy because Tetris is like 40 years old. You'd think that it would have been copied back then.
Yeah, but this was about trying to make a copy for mobile.
That stupid Nokia N-Gage. Anyway,
but that brings up the squint test, which I was actually misinterpreting for a while when I was like looking into this. The squint test is like you look at the 2 works side by side as like a regular ass person would look at them. And for this case, Zhayo and Tetris both submitted gameplay videos, and the court was like, if I have to squint to try to find distinctions at the granular level, like if I'm only finding distinctions in like, well, these panels look embossed, whereas these panels look matte, then it's very likely that you've got infringing material and the 2 works are going to be substantially similar. So if you are only finding those very, very minute differences, there's probably some infringement going on.
See, that's not what I thought squint test was going to be. I thought it was going to be the other thing where it's if your squints from the Sandlot, would you be able to tell the difference between these?
Oh, yeah. There's no reference of s'mores or Sandlot or even the word forever.
Although if Disney had their way, forever would be a part of copyright law. So,
oh man, that'd be trademarked.
That fucking mouth. All right, Mel, what are your thoughts about this?
That's like so interesting. I would have thought that the squint test was more or less like if you were to squint and they look really similar, or like if things are like blurry and they're similar, then like that would probably be an infringement. But like you'd really have to be like in the minute details, which is like surprising.
That's literally the way that I thought that it was like, if you kind of squint so everything's blurry, do they look similar? Whereas instead it's like, are you squinting to look super hard at the very, very small details?
Just crazy, because then that could mean like you could change a couple of things and like a couple of things being like relatively bigger ones. I don't know.
Yeah, that's the key, is they'd have to be bigger ones. So that's why like Palworld being a survival game with a completely different gameplay loop than most Pokemon games. Like I said, most, because I do think that Pokemon Legends Arceus is probably the closest to this one. You're going to look at mainline Pokemon games and Palworld and be like, those aren't similar.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say before I made that absolutely excellent Sandlot joke that you both know sold. So, yeah, I'm definitely with you there. I think it's pretty wild that the law around something like this can be so utterly subjective, though, right? Like you get the wrong lawyer or the wrong judge, and suddenly it's a completely different judgment on that specific day. That's absolutely wild, especially when you're talking about like these monoliths, these institutions who have to defend this stuff day in and day out. Like it's really, really crazy to think about it in that way.
Yeah, and that's where the cynic part of me about the law comes in, because it's like, well, that's why if you're bringing the lawsuit, you get to decide where you want to bring it. And if you're defending the lawsuit, you get to decide if you want to try to challenge that venue. And so you know what judges are there and what types of people might end up on a jury and all of that. Like there's a lot of gamesmanship that goes into that too.
That's crazy.
That's
totally wild.
I don't know if I like that.
I hate that.
I don't, which is why it's the cynic part of me. So I'm much more just on the, what's the precedent say? What did the judge of the past say? Let's do that.
That's real icky.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like it.
Sorry to ruin that.
That's fine. We got a sponsor for our next question. This question is sponsored by the movie Rip, a Remix Manifesto, which is an open source documentary about how corporations use copyright law to muzzle self-expression. And unlike most weeks, this is a real movie that you can and actually should go and watch. They call it open source because they use a bunch of footage that people sent in. They posted the entire thing to their website so you can download it and edit it and rebuild it in whatever way you see fit. It's a really, really cool project. In fact, they released a 2.0 version where people like sent in stuff to add to it and back up some of the points made or refute some of them. It's really awesome. Kevin, you look like you were about to say something.
No, I was just taking a deep breath.
Oh, all right. Fair enough. All right. So anyway, Rip, a Remix Manifesto wants to know if you could make any one thing public domain with the caveat that you are doing it to cause the most possible chaos. What do you pick and how does it change the world?
I'd like to go first. I want to pick a Disney IP, and more specifically the Disney princesses, because I feel like we're just going to be corrupting a whole like slew of like the young generation from realizing that they're Disney princesses and like their Disney princes are not who they are. And I want people to like make like Gangster Princess and then turn it into like a mature movie.
I have seen Gangster Princesses airbrushed on the back of a black hoodie at a mall.
I love it.
It's great.
Mel is unintentionally smashing the patriarchy with hers. I kind of love that.
That's great. I love the idea of like, yeah, all of these Disney princesses are public domain because most of them were already, and then Disney made them not public domain. And so you're just like, no, give them back.
Yeah. Like Snow White. Yeah. I know where you're at.
Oh, man. That's awesome.
I am going to do the thing that a ton of lawyers and politicians do, which is I'm not going to answer the question directly.
You son of a bitch.
I'm just going to use this as a way to mention Creative Commons. Creative Commons is a nonprofit that works to standardize licenses that can be granted by creators, where people that want to use those original works can rely on those licenses to know whether and how they can access what would otherwise be copyright protected. That's at creativecommons.org. And if I did have to answer the question, I was trying to think of like specific protected material that would go public domain to cause chaos, but instead I would cause chaos by making it so any specific individuals who create something hold the copyright rather than whatever sort of entity they work for. Because most of us in like our employment, if we create something using work resources or using something or creating something in the course of our work, that belongs to our employer. And I would just create chaos by making it belong to the individual employee that created it. Part of that was I was thinking of the Randy Orton tattoo case in the WWE 2K games. The tattoo artist that did, I think, 5 of Randy Orton's tattoos sued Take-Two Interactive for infringing on her tattoo designs by reproducing them in the game.
That's wild.
For the character model, and she won.
Wow.
Yeah. So she didn't get a ton of money, but I think she got a few thousand dollars or a few thousand British pounds.
That's nuts. That's nuts. Yeah, get that, stack that cheddar.
Yeah.
I want to point out that when I Googled public domain for this question, the first, like, Google has a thing that's like, other people are asking, and the first question in that block was, why is public domain? And if that ain't some shit, why is public domain bad? And if that ain't some shit, I don't know what is. Like,
it is some shit.
Why would it say, why is public domain bad, instead of why is public domain good? What can I do with public domain? Like, oh man, that pisses me right off. Anyway, other things that piss me right off, the Beatles. Fucking the Beatles. They are a sacred cow. And so I want to put all of the Beatles songs into public domain. I want some shitty SoundCloud rapper to be able to rap over the beat on Norwegian Wood. I want to hear Imogene Heap remake Blackbird and play it at the fucking Super Bowl halftime show. Like, I want the Beatles works to be everywhere, so that way people stop acting like the Beatles are the best thing since music started. Maybe that's just me.
I am just imagining some like absolutely degen artist sampling Eleanor Rigby, but literally just the Beatles singing Eleanor Rigby, and then going on a terrible song about all of the dirty shit that she does in bed.
Oh, like an ICP song or some shit?
Yeah. Like Eleanor Rigby, boom, Dirty Sanchez.
Oh God,
that'd be wild.
Here's the thing: my mind immediately started writing lyrics for that song, and I'm not gonna say I'm on the podcast. But if you catch me in the Discord in a voice channel, I will let you. As long as you're not recording me there, I will tell them to you. But they are gross. They are fucking vile.
Yeah.
Oh man. Oh, speaking of vile, fuck you, Dan. Oh God. Oh, all right. Anybody got anything else to say about intellectual property, copyright, trademark, or Pal World? Somehow those are all what we talked about this episode.
Yeah, crazy. I'm really enjoying Pal World. I didn't think that I was going to, but pleasantly surprised.
It is way better than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I'm not actually normally a huge fan of the survival games. Like, I get tired of them pretty quickly. Like, I only lasted like 3 hours on Raft, but I played like 6.5 hours straight on Saturday with friends, and it is way more fun multiplayer.
For sure.
It's also one of those things where, like, survival games have a lot of boring bullshit you have to do, and in Pal World, you can either do that boring bullshit or go find a pal to do it for you.
Yeah,
maybe that's it. Because that's a good point.
Yeah. And play with like friends too. Like, you can have your friends do all the boring shit, and then like you can just scum off your friend and go like capture a whole bunch of pals.
I saw a video about like being the mom in your survival game group where it's like they'll go out and farm or hunt or whatever and then come back and hand you a broken spear and you hand them a new spear.
Yep. I built a giant home for our server for everybody. So everybody has their own room right now.
That's amazing.
Oh, that's cute.
That's absolutely amazing. All right, cool. Outside of that, why don't we tell the people where we can be found? Kevin, go first.
All right. You can find me in the Discord as Kevin Tense. You can find me on Twitch and YouTube as Kevin Tense. I have been streaming on both, and it's been going pretty well. I also have like just some videos on YouTube for Modern Warfare 3, specifically around zombies if you play that stuff. But yeah, that's where you can find me. So you should do that. And we can chat about copyright law while I'm streaming too.
Yeah. His Modern Warfare stuff, I don't give a shit about Call of Duty, but some of his shorts are absolutely gold. So those are definitely worth subscribing for. And also make sure that you're following him on Twitch because every once in a while he'll do a Phoenix Wright stream where he analyzes all of the crazy shit Phoenix Wright does through the eyes of a lawyer. And those are absolutely amazing. And part of what gave me the idea for this episode. So thanks for those.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. You can find me on the Discord and in Blue Sky as a 20-sided ninja. So yeah, check me out there. If you're not on Blue Sky, man, there's some good discourse happening over there. What about you, Mel?
So I'm Melephant. You can find me on Discord and Blue Sky as Melephant. But I just started a new Instagram, if that's like what you're into, called Melly Eats Food. And it's literally just going to be a blog of me showing you foods that I'm eating. That's it. It's great.
I am so excited for this because you love food so much and you have great taste in it. So I think it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, and I can't wait to like have it be a little bit bigger so that me and my dad can like post like cooking videos on it.
I can't wait for it to be big enough that people are like, oh shit, Melly Eats Food is here. We got to give her the good stuff, you know?
That'd be wonderful. Bring all my friends along too.
So good.
Also, I just remembered I also have a Blue Sky.
He uses it a lot, folks.
Follow him there.
I wasn't on Twitter, and then Twitter imploded, so I was like, I guess I'll make a Blue Sky, and so I like have one, but I'm on that as much as I was on Twitter, which is not.
Oh man, you got to get on there. There's some good shit happening.
I follow Bodega Cats, and that's about it.
It's a good follow. I follow foxes every hour. Every hour I get a new fox. It's great. All right, say goodbye to the humans.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. If you're listening, thanks for listening. Goodbye.
Super.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that one.